and welcome to topic 11. And it's all about managing the value chain. But at this point in time, when we talk about the value chain, we're talking about suppliers and customers, right? And mainly suppliers in that value chain. And that's why, one of the participation activities is really related to suppliers themselves. Actually, two of them, all right? So any questions at all before we get started? You can unmute, or you can leave me a question on chat, or send me an email at any time, and I'd be happy to answer it. And if it'll help out your colleagues, I will actually put the answer on the Blackboard announcements.
So,
Okay.
good evening.
Okay, go ahead.
For the assignment 4, suppose we answer more questions for bonus marks. Can we accumulate to 100?
I'm not going to give you any bonus marks. And so that what'll happen is if you go way over 100, I will go to, the closest to 100, and that's when I stop marking, and I won't even look at the others. All right. So just try to stay as close to 100 as you possibly can. And I won't be looking at bonus marks for that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's get started. Topic 11, commentary, and I'm going to talk about, there's 4 participation activities this topic, so that you know what they are. Okay. The good news is that there's no surveys to complete in topic 11, and there's really only one PowerPoint presentation that you should read and be accountable for, for test number 3. So I'm going to talk about test number 3. So again, it's only a one-time thing, all right? So the test date is April the 16th. It's been set by the registrar, and the time starts at 7 p.m. It'll be another 80-minute test. And again, I tell you, or actually, want to review that you have to test your device for Respondus lockdown and webcam capability before the test, so that you know that you're ready, and you access this test in the Blackboard topic 13. And so I already put the first announcement out, but wanted to cover that. And on Blackboard topic 13, this is what the test access actually post looks like to click on to get to the test, right here. And so here, about the study approach, it's the same as the previous 2 tests. And what's really important then are the commentary PowerPoints, and that's, this is commentary 11 PowerPoint right now that we're going through. And here are the related Robbins PowerPoint chapter decks that you should be going through. So for topic 9, chapter 2 and 4. For topic 10, there's nothing related there. And topic 11, it's Robbins chapter 13. And then for topic 12, it's Robbins chapter 3. All right, so there's a line missing right here, so that's where it should be. All right, so then the practice tests, just like in test 1 and test 2, are located under topic 8. And then I'd ask you to review, the participation activities, because if you take a look at what's going to be asked on the group project, there'll be a lot of the same participation activities to do there, and likely see some test questions related to those in test number 3. And then I also, recommend that you look at the slide decks that are in Blackboard on each one of those topics of 9, 10, 11, and 12. And go through them, because there's a little more information. And again, the highlighting in these commentary presentations and the bolding and the golden keys will kind of point you to where you need to read a little more information, and that will give you some hints on what to look for in the Blackboard topic slide text and the actual Robbins chapter PowerPoint slide decks as well. And then if you need more information, the topic video presentations are a good source of information. And of course, the e-text is available for you to read. Okay, so that's where that is. Any questions about that? We're all good? Okay, no questions? All right, so where are we now, like in terms of the continuum or the range of the evolution of the management principles? We're really kind of into the quantitative side, and in the quantitative side, that's really where total quality management has really kind of come to bear. And total quality management really started in wartime, where they're trying to make the war machine a lot more efficient and effective, and that's where the quality movement really started with you know uh, Edward Deming and Crosby and a few others that were sort of the pioneers in quality. And so knowing about Edward Deming is really important. There's going to be a couple of test questions around that. So just so you know, when I get into Edward Deming in this PowerPoint slide, put your ears up and listen to that. And then along with that are, the system side of management principles, and as well the system side is going to go a long way in the next level or the next phase of management principles when we get into the impact of artificial intelligence. So that's really to kind of tune in, because those areas are going to be really important to build from when you're in your career management position. Okay, so chapter 13 is about operations management, and what you're going to look at, in terms of, this topic 11 is the nature and the purpose of the value chain. And just a commentary about the value chain. In my day, when we were doing marketing and we were doing competitive advantage, we were looking at companies competing with other companies. In today's world, it's really value chains are competing with other value chains. So if you take a look at say Amazon, well, Amazon's competing with Alibaba. Amazon is competing with Temu and others, Shopify. All right, so it gets to be very important. And then as organizations get larger, they, in some cases, organizations have their very own supply chain. And even as a small business now, you rely on other areas doing different things for the company, and you need to manage that supply chain. And so that's why it's really important to really understand how to get the best suppliers and how to make sure that you have the commitment and the brand alignment, with all those partners. And then we're going to talk about describing how the value chain management is done. So it's really important to look at these points in this particular topic. It'll really help you for the test. Okay, so how do I choose suppliers? So that gets to be a key question, and you can see that this is highlighted. But we continue to improve effectiveness of our organization, but now we focus on our business partners, not just our own internal operations. And the whole idea is that you can have a business partner that supplies part of your business. Something goes wrong with the customer, and what does the customer look at? It looks at the overall entity that holds the brand for that supply chain. So it doesn't matter who did the problem, it's everybody's problem. That's the key, and that's why it's so important to be able to pick the right suppliers. And then who should we choose to be part of our supply chain, and how do we improve that supply chain on a regular basis? All right, and so what is a supply chain? Well, you take a look at something that's created. It starts with raw materials and nuts and bolts. The manufacturer assembles it, and then it gets distributed by an actual channel operation. Then it gets to end of the way in terms of a retailer or a seller, and then it gets to the customer. So that's what that supply chain really encompasses, the whole piece. So if you take a look at IBM, IBM was foremost in getting together with an international shipping company called Maersk, and they started a joint venture, and they really needed to look at how can they improve the supply chain globally, and that's where they created, or at least were one of the forerunners in blockchain. And blockchain really is a cryptology that really protects the information as well as uses cryptocurrency, and everything is basically real time, where you can see the supply chain, from start to finish, and everybody is instantly up to date on what's going on. And that's where we're going. And guess what? Artificial intelligence will even make that more effective and more complex. So, you use the predictive AI for better profitability. IBM Planning Analytics unifies the team. The logistics and inventory planning come together, and AI and advanced analytics for demand planning and forecasting. So everybody, all those members, some supply chains have hundreds of partners, and they're all together, and they're looking at, what the customer is doing, how sales are going, what does the demand look like, how does the environment is coming together, so that there's no surprises, and they can, pick or sort of take advantage of particular trends, or defend themselves against negative trends, and maximize profitability. So it's a really big piece, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so in topic 11, there's four pieces. So there's 11A and 11B are individual submissions, as single people, and then 11C and 11D are group submissions, and they're all due, next Monday, right? And see, here's what they look like. So the topic 11A, it's an individual exercise, and you need to go back to your communication style Pearson-Revel survey results, from topic 8, and look at how does this compare to your communications as you work with your existing group. And already now, see, you're working towards assignment number 5. So you're getting some insights on that you would get really good marks if you bring that into the picture, when you're answering the questions for assignment number 5 as an individual submission. And use this table. I mean, you can create a table in Word that looks just like this, but we want you to pick up 3 actual working style attributes you could compare your survey results with, all right? So those, and then, why do you think the attributes affect your communication style? And again, not looking for a lot of words, but I'm looking for critical thinking. I'm looking for, why does it matter, all right? Why it matters. But to do that, all right, you can have a look at this link, and it describes, what you need to do as well. Okay, participation 11B, again, it's an individual exercise that's due, and you upload, results from your communicating supportively Pearson-Revel survey, so similarly to, 11A, and how does this compare to your communications as you work on the group project? Again, those insights will impact what you could talk about or refer to when you're doing assignment number 5. And again, you create this little table. So identify 3 actual working communication support attributes that you can compare your survey results with, and then really, why it matters. So why do you think these attributes, or this individual attribute, affects your communication style? And again, I'm asking you to kind of keep with the template itself. You may, initially put it together yourself, but the numbering is important. It really helps me help you in terms of the way I mark it, and I know what to expect. And that will go a long way in you showing that you've done your due diligence, right? Okay, so what I wanted to do is go through this video and make sure that you really get a sense of how you're going to do one of the group participation activities, and it's learning how to do a SIPOC, and we'll explain what SIPOC is, but it's how you, and it'll be explained in the video, and the exact steps that you use when you conduct that. So why are we showing you that? Well, it's because you're going to do a SIPOC, as 11C, and you have to pick a supplier. Just pick one supplier to be able to do that of Tim Hortons, and then go through this process. So that's why we're going to, and then, so here's some typical suppliers. You just pick one, maybe it's the coffee bean supplier, or a supplier of dairy products or paper products. So this list is here that you can use. And then you'll not only use that same supplier, in 11C, but you'll talk about that same supplier now in 11D, where you have to, do, fill out the model of supplier evaluation. All right, and I'll explain that as we go through. But let's just start with this video.
In this video, you're going to learn what is a SIPOC and the
Okay, so can you just, did you hear the sound? Is the sound showing? Can you give me a thumbs up if you heard the sound? Okay, great, thanks. All right, so I'll play it here.
the exact steps that I use when I conduct mine. And if you want to be a project ninja, stick around to this end of this video where I'm going to share with you all about my new online world-class project management course. Hi, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Adriana Girdler. I'm a productivity specialist, an efficiency expert, and a project management professional. And if you're like me, you want to do things well and you want to do them right. And when it comes to improving any process or way of working, SIPOC is the first tool that you want to use. So let's get to it, where I'm going to show you how to do just that. SIPOC meaning. SIPOC actually is an acronym, and that acronym stands for supplier, input, process, output, and customer. And the SIPOC meaning really is to take a look holistically at a process from true start to true finish and everything in between. And that in between are your inputs and the outputs, the people who are going to receive whatever it is that process has, and those people, the stakeholders, who input into it. So it's really holistic in its approach.
I love Monday.com.
What's Monday.com?
You don't know Monday.com? This is Monday.com.
How to create a SIPOC. Well, first you need the tool, and that could be very simply an Excel spreadsheet, a Word document, Google Sheets, Visio, whatever it is that you can have, and you actually put the acronyms in each column. Now you also want to pick a team too. Yeah, you can do a SIPOC on your own, but there's a lot of value when you're really trying to understand everything to get the right people involved. So get people involved who are going to be part of the process. That's really important because they're going to know nuances that you just don't know. Okay, let's get to it. So the process that I'm going to use for you, just to make it really simple, is a sandwich making process for lunch. All right. I know there's tons of processes out there that can be a lot more complex, but that doesn't matter. It's really just to give you an idea as to what we're going to be doing. So step one, with the acronyms that you're going to have, the first process or the first column you want to go to is the P column. So capturing the process steps. And that's really start to end. It's a series of high-level action items. So you really need to ensure with the people that are working with you to capture that is high-level 5 to 10 steps max are the action items as to what that process is all about. And in our example, here's what our process steps are about. First step is decide what to eat. Second is get ingredients. Third, get tools. Make your sandwich, eat your sandwich, and last but not least, clean up. So get that process first because that establishes everything. It is your baseline, and that's how you're going to create everything else. So that process, high level, all needs to be captured. First step is do the P in the middle of your SIPOC. Step two is you now want to go to the right of the P column, which is outputs. And that's really important because, again, you do your process, and now what's the output of that process? We usually do it that way because it's really easy. It's like after that process, what is it that you are going to get from it? So in our example of sandwich making for lunch, let's look at our process steps. Now those process steps are anything that we get at the end of that particular step. And sometimes there's multiple things that you may get. So what I recommend is do label them 1, 2, 3 if you do have multiple for that one particular process step. Because you may down the road need to go to it from an improvement perspective, project perspective, and you need to have that information. Don't generalize it too much, really be specific here. So in our example, outputs for deciding what to eat is a decision on the type of sandwich. For the second step, get ingredients, our outputs are the actual ingredients, and we're going to use whole wheat bread, peanut butter, jam. And for the third step, get tools, part of our outputs is cutting board, knife, plates, etc. So you can see with the example the type of outputs that we have for this particular process, and just go through until you finish them all. Step 3 is the customer column. Again, you want to go from the middle and move your way outwards. So we did the process, we did the outputs, now it's the customer of those particular outputs. Now, there's a couple things you can do here. The example I'm giving you is you're going to genericize it, okay? Because it's such a simple process, there's no need to be detailed. But sometimes you want to do just what we did, is you want to, for every output, tell me who the customer is. So in our example of sandwich making for lunch, let's go through it. When we take a look at our process steps of the sandwich making and all the outputs, who is the customer for this? Well, based on who I'm doing the process for, it is going to be the parent. And by the way, I have 2 kids. I have a 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. So those are just pieces of information for you so you understand who it's being delivered to. And depending on how you use this SIPOC, that becomes very valuable. Step 4, you now want to look to the left of the process column. So this is where you're now going to go to the input section. So what are the steps that you need to enable this process step? What's going to kick it off for you to have it happen? And just like you did with the outputs, you want to be very specific here and actually number each one. It becomes, again, very helpful for projects itself, from task perspective, or even from improvements, the things you need to work on. So let's take a look at our example. So if we have a process step of deciding what to eat, the inputs for us to even know that that step has to occur is we have a hungry child or children, and it's lunchtime. Now, if we look at our second process step, and that is getting ingredients, one of the inputs into getting ingredients is sandwich selection. We got to select our sandwich in order to get our ingredients, and so on and so forth. So now this becomes very specific. You want to isolate it so you understand per process step what are those inputs, because again, the value of the SIPOC is when you're in improvements, projects, a lot of things can sometimes get missed because people don't understand inputs and outputs. So this is why this SIPOC is so cool. Now we only have one column left, and that is stakeholders. So we now want to find out who the stakeholders are that supply the inputs. So in our example here, it really is genericized. I just kind of did it overall, and it is the parent and the 2 children that are going to dictate and give the inputs into what's happening. Now, like I said earlier on the customer side, is you can be very specific per input if you'd like to, depending on the complexity of the process that you're looking at, and as well as how you want to use it. When do you use a SIPOC? Well, the cool thing about a SIPOC is you can use it for many different things. So if you have a problem within a process, like let's say you have a customer service issue and your clients or customers aren't getting what they need, you can do a SIPOC to understand the process, the ins and outs, the customers, etc., stakeholders, to really start to go at a high level what could potentially be the issue, so you can kind of zoom in and deal with the right thing. You can use it for understanding of a scope of a project. So if you have a project coming up and it's process oriented or way of working oriented, you can take a look at a SIPOC so you can ensure that you have all the right aspects you need to be successful. I've also used a SIPOC for change management, particularly when I want to have a really good understanding as to who my customers are and who the stakeholders are, because I need to do change management around them. And when you do a SIPOC, you'll be amazed at the people you've forgotten in your project, and that's a really important tool. I've also used it, which is pretty cool, when you have a futuristic idea, a vision, you know you want to create a project around it, and before I go into what I call the future state, we need to do a SIPOC to have an understanding, okay, what exactly do you want to do here? I then use that as the springboard needed in order to create the full process future state map. So there's a lot of cool ways you can use a SIPOC. Now that you know how to do a SIPOC, are you now wondering how to be a project ninja?
Okay. Any questions at all? Any questions at all? Yeah. Okay, I'll just continue then. So the thing is, on this particular SIPOC, you're gonna choose a supplier, and then this slide here is to pick which supplier you're going to take. And just remember that when you pick that, you're going to be using that same supplier to complete, 11D as well. Okay. And here you can see that there's a template that you can use that you can click up. Again, I'm reminding you to just pick one supplier, for both exercises 11C and 11D. And then I put another document on Google Docs so that you can go to it and then read about it as well. It'll help you to finish that. And just remember, it'll prepare you to address one of the deliverables on the group project on the Amazon assignment, right? And again, check out the additional slides that I'm going to go through, to help you get there. Okay, so for 11D now is really you're going to fill this out for that particular partner that you picked. But the thing is that partnering with the right supplier, as I said before, it's really important because you'll get better quality, you'll get better cost efficiency, a more reliable delivery, and which directly impacts the customer. So really what you're looking for is you want a reliable supplier, for the long term, and you need to do your due diligence to be able to evaluate and make sure you're getting the right person, the right partner, and that partner has to align with the overall vision, of the supply chain or of your company. So that's why it's important. And a strong supplier, then you'll have better innovation. You'll have more to do with sustainability, long-term business growth, creating a competitive edge, and that's what this is all about. And it's a foundation for operational success and brand reputation. So it's a really key requirement, and that's why we're painstakingly taking you through this. And oh, by the way, the SIPOC really is a tool that you can use, on the value chain or the supply chain. And again, the value chain really is a tool that was, created, based on management principles. So, it all kind of ties together. Okay, so here's the 11D, and you can use the outline that's given on this particular link. And I think this is a mistake here, right? It's 11C, to look at. So, and that takes us now back to, where we're in the other topics when we were talking about the transformation process. So we're going to talk a little more about, the exchange, the retail exchange transformation process. And again, how, there'll be some questions related to, to the supply chain and the transformation process as we, go through that test number 3. And so what are you doing then in the transformation? You're adding value, right? And you're, where the inputs are raw materials, it's relatively easy to identify what kind of transformation is involved. And then the inputs are information or people, right? And so here's this, again, this illustration to kind of show you where it goes through, and really where we're focusing on, and you can see that this is highlighted. We're focusing, on this particular topic, on the exchange transformation, and that you're available where the customer is, and that's what you have to remember. And there's really 4 value creating activities. You're providing a product, you're pricing it, you're providing a wider range of products. So, you'll probably have a product line. And then you're improving and innovating products. So that's what is really the key to creating value in the value chain, for retailers or related to retailers. So the thing is, then, in retail operations, that transformation, it's an input of a customer with cash. They give you cash and you provide a good or a service, right? That's what to remember. And so why do we need to know about the value chain? Well, your project team, again, you need to do it for Tim Hortons, and you're going to really understand what SIPOC is all about, so it all kind of ties together. Okay, now what do you accomplish? Well, just as they said in the video, there's all kinds of value that you get out of doing a SIPOC, and you have a tool now to be able to business process re-engineer it or improve it, and so that it'll show you how to make the value chain leaner, and we're going to talk about Michael Porter, in the next slide. How can we make the process easier, better, faster, cheaper? Are we delivering a quality product to our customers? Can we improve the way we manage our suppliers? I told you in business process improvement, sometimes when you get the provider and the customer inside that process, you can have a service level agreement where the improvements can be around the supplier can give the customer part in that value chain, like internal customer, internal supplier. The supplier could give the good ideas to the customer that gets the handoff from the supplier, and the supplier can get good ideas, from the customer in that transaction. So there's a lot to be gained by that. And then answering these questions: are the suppliers delivering what we need? Do we need to know the personas of our customers and getting into, the target markets and what demographics they fall into? And everybody along that supply chain, if they know those attributes and what's really required by the customer, in their own shops, they can really customize their approach to be able to provide an overall, smashing, value proposition for that target market. And then, are there any inefficiencies that you can improve? So there's all kinds of advantages, what I'm trying to say, in doing SIPOC. So that gets us back to the value chain. And really, Michael Porter, a Harvard professor, he coined, the term value chain. And what you need to understand about the value chain, and you can see here that it's highlighted, is that there's primary activities, and then there's support activities. So you can see in a generic supply chain, there's inbound logistics, where they bring in the raw materials, they put it together, like assemble it or manufacture it or whatever in the operations. And then it goes out into, the channels by, channel operatives in terms of, trucks and vessels and, ships and trains. And to get to the either retail operations or directly to the customer. And then there's marketing, sales that really kind of hone the value proposition. And then lo and behold, there's a service component in that, and we're going to talk about that in later slides. So don't lose sight of this particular link in the value chain as well. And then if you look at these typical support activities, well, the firm infrastructure supports infrastructure for all of these links, right? Human resources management provides services for all of these links, as does technology, as does procurement. All right, so that's where that is. So operations, here's the stage at which raw materials are turned into the final product. Okay, so who is Michael Porter? He's going to be a big part of your life as you go through business. Management professor at Harvard. He really did the Porter's 5 forces, the generic strategies of which we're going to talk about, and he actually did coin the term value chain. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go through this part quickly. This is for you. It's just more detail on the value chain, but you answer these questions: that how do you create value through that value chain? How do you change business inputs into business outputs? Manufacturing companies create value by acquiring raw materials. So those kind of pieces. But the more value an organization creates, the more profitable it's likely to be, right? And when you provide more value to your customers, you build competitive advantage. And and if you do it on a consistent basis, you could build sustainable competitive advantage, through understanding the VRIO process that we talked about last topic. And rather than looking at departments or accounting costs, Porter's value chain focuses on systems. And that's why, we talked about, management principles, and we're into the systems era. And now in the systems, you're looking for patterns, you're looking for, interoperability, those kind of things. And then how inputs are changed into outputs purchased by consumers. So that's what the piece. So here's again a generic look at Porter's value chain. And again, to reemphasize, these are primary activities. It's flipped around this time in this particular illustration, and these are support activities. So understand, those two main categories, in the value chain. And what are you trying to do? You're trying to create competitive advantage, which translates into profitability, in the long run. Okay. So it's a really, like, I guess, panoramic view, but you can step back and really take a look at the business landscape, and it paves the way for really good strategic planning and tangible benefits for productivity and cost savings. And again, we're going to talk about differentiation, to be unique in the marketplace will really, bring value to the customer and bring more profitability to your operation. And what we're really talking about is having the customer satisfied and getting loyal customers coming back, so customer loyalty. So really, the whole chain view and the work around making it the best it can be will lead to sustainable competitive advantage, right? And again, that gets back into the strategic advantage going forward. Okay, so they're the building blocks of competitive advantage, and again, it's all about making choices. And when we're making choices, what you're really doing, you're making trade-offs. So you're trying to get the most value, for the resources, and in some cases, the sort of the only available resources that are there. All right. Okay. So a company's value chain, it's a larger value system that includes upstream suppliers and downstream distribution channels, and strategic planning really gets you to look at these external linkages. So those interdependencies, those are really key to really understand and really understand the influences that drive competitive positioning. Okay, not going to go through that. I talked about the tangible benefits, but now here's steps on how to do that. I'm not going to discuss that, but I'm going to leave that for you to kind of go through. Okay. But here's where we start getting into competitive strategy, and you need to understand competitive strategy, especially when we talk about the generic strategies that our person here, Michael Porter, has created. So what you're looking at is that this is markets where business compete, and this is competitive advantage. All right, and you can have a broad view of cost leadership. That means you do it right across the board, with many target markets, or you could be differentiation leadership, in larger markets, or you can focus and you can cost focus. And what that means is that you're looking at, this is the same drawing, but only, stated a little differently. On the cost focus, you're really looking at maybe one particular segment. So you focused on cost on that segment, and you focus on differentiation or a niche, or the uniqueness in one segment. But there's some risk around doing the focus, because sometimes that segment that you're servicing, they may either their preferences will change, and then all of a sudden now you're not relevant, and your business falls apart, or they disappear, right? And so that you're really putting all your eggs in one basket, on one particular segment. Whereas if you're doing it on a broad basis, looking at many types of customers, well, then you've got a lot more kind of diversity to be able to deal with and sustain your capability. So that's why I'm getting into this next slide, and here's where it's really important. All right. So when you're looking at this, and you can see all the highlighting going on, when you look at Porter's value chain, you have to make the distinction, when you're creating this value chain, between, are you going to be a differentiation type of supply chain where you're going to produce unique products, say like Apple, right, where they're the top of the line, or are you going to be low cost like Walmart, so that you're you know, you have these people coming back because they're price sensitive. So when you're deciding on how to improve your value chain, you know, be really clear about whether you're trying to set yourself apart or you're looking at cost base, because that will change your approach in working in that value chain. So depending on your strategy, your value chain will change. All right. And that's what to remember. You can see the gold key here. So when you're looking at competitive advantage, you decide in my value chain, the one I'm working on, okay, we're going to really be, you know, cost advantage providers, or we're really going to be differentiated advisors, but we can't do both because you start mixing and matching, and then you've got all these multiple partners in some of these large supply chains that'll get confused, right? So you got to keep the lines pretty straight there. Okay, so what's the difference then in terms of cost advantage versus differentiation advantage? Well, here's where, you know, supply chain will compete or on costs, and you know, here's some good examples: Amazon, Walmart, McDonald's, Ford, Toyota. But differentiation advantage, well, here's where, you know, Apple comes in, or maybe Ferrari, right? Starbucks. You know, Starbucks wants to be seen as this, you know, boutique type of operation where people not only come to get coffee, but they want the atmosphere and the attributes of a really nice, a good place to even, you know, work with their laptop kind of thing, right? And here's the steps to be able to, you know, identify the firm's primary and support activities. So now we're starting to create the supply chain. And then establish relative importance of each activity, you know, in the total cost of the product. And you can see that it's all cost driven, you know, when you're designing that value chain. Whereas on the differentiation advantage piece, it's all about the uniqueness of the line of products or the product or the service that you're going to be offering. So that's the key in this slide. So whereas value chain, very useful strategic management tool. And it works by breaking those organizations' activities down into strategic relevant pieces. Okay, so talked a lot. So any questions at all? You can unmute or you can put it on chat. And again, you know, Jennifer asked this question, you know, are the table of contents and the question add up table supposed to be separate? And the answer is no, it's all in one piece, and you'll see the example that I provided in the instructions. So it's just one table of contents with the actual add-on column or the additive column and showing where the total is. Okay, how are we doing so far? What's the pace like? Am I talking too fast, or are we doing okay? Okay, we're all good. Okay, so when we look at this value chain, then there's other types of operations. And what you need to know, and you can see that it's highlighted, you have to know what a KIF is, right? Those are knowledge-intensive firms. And they're mainly service-based organizations. They have their own type of value chain, right? Because they're there to solve complex problems, and they provide solutions for clients. And one of the key is that in some cases they transfer knowledge, and in some cases, you know, they just have an abundance of knowledge that you can tap into. So they have you know, have human capital and expertise that few organizations possess. You know, mainly, you know, high-priced consulting firms that have, you know, in pharmaceuticals or whatever, and they create market value through knowledge. So they accumulate the knowledge, and they have that as you know, as knowledge itself, and then they transfer knowledge or transfer technology, and in some cases, you know, to other organizations. And they're big in innovation, initiative, and competence building, right? And, you know, when you have core competencies, you have elements of competitive advantage. Okay, so that's where you need to know this. So knowledge intensive firms, you know, what are the key characteristics? Well, knowledge, skills, and experience of staff, vital to the development of intellectual capital, right? Knowledge is often, you know, difficult to imitate and embedded. And so that when we say both knowledge stocks, that's the accumulation of, you know, knowledge in itself. It might be, you know, international research. So that's a stock that they can actually sell, to companies if they want to go into a particular market. And then flows in terms of, well, maybe transferring the knowledge know-how to an organization where you can do something better. So they rely on creation and the transfer and integration of knowledge. So this is how this all comes together. You start with data. Data, it gets converted, by algorithms or, frameworks to create information from that data that really then translates into, oh, we know something because of that information. And then all of a sudden now we have intelligence, all right? And then we can either sell that intelligence, we can do it for people, in terms of stock, or we can actually license people to do it, or do it for people where we'll actually transfer, and that's a flow. Okay, so here's what it looks like then on the on the value chain. So what you have then is that you have the processes, identifying knowledge, acquiring it, codifying it, storing it, disseminate it, refining that knowledge, those kind of things. So those are the primary activities, and these are the support activities, right? So again, it's that's the way that it's set up. And what are you doing then is that these are the organizational capabilities that come out of that. And what do you get out of it is you get performance outcomes in terms of, profit margin or competitive advantage or those kind of things. So that's how this comes together. So how can you improve that value chain? Well, quality assurance. You're making sure that, whatever gets out of the building, is of the quality that standard that it's supposed to meet. And there's you can test for that. You can look for defects, and then we talked about, or we're going to talk about lean manufacturing, and that's all part of the total quality management composition, where you're minimizing waste and maximizing productivity. And so there may be some questions around that in the test in terms of lean manufacturing. And then there's the supply chain management. And that's where all this thing comes together with all these partners in terms of collaboration and coordination, to make it work as one entity, and with artificial intelligence, to have real-time status on what's going on as if it was just one entity doing things. Okay, so again, total quality management, what is it? Well, three main components, continuous improvement, and that's Kaizen. And that came out of the Japan quality movement, and this is what Kaizen looks like. What you're doing is you look at the problem, you develop countermeasures, you determine the root causes, you find solution options, you test them, and then you agree on a solution, you implement it, and then you standardize it, and so that's the standard practice. And that's what people shoot for. And if they're not getting there, they keep on going around this to continuously improve it. So continual improvement is really a key platform. And again, Edward Deming talks about continuous improvement, and we'll talk about that in the next couple of slides here. But continuous improvement, employee empowerment. So again, when Honda showed up in Ontario manufacturing Honda cars, they introduced quality circles. And what quality circles are is that inside the shifts, just near the end of the shift, these people get together and talk about what's going right, what's going wrong, and how we can improve things. And they're all part of the shared vision. And that's how they're empowered to fix their own things, and that's how they stay committed and engaged in what's going on. And the whole idea is that focus on the customer satisfaction piece, and really that's if you look at quality and customer satisfaction, they're one and the same. Okay, so William Edward Demings, he's the father of the quality management, and really he talked about focusing on quality, and he talked about Deming's 14 points, and really was the foundational quality guru that brought in continuous improvement cycle. All right, and what he mainly said, and you can see there's a little gold key here. If you focus on cost, well, costs go up, quality goes down. You know, if that's your only focus is on cost, you start losing sight of, what you're doing for the customer. But if you focus on quality, quality goes up, and as the quality goes up, costs will fall, right? So that's the, the key, relationships, around quality and what keeps it going. So, Deming's 14 points, create consistency, adopt a new philosophy, cease the dependence on mass inspection. So really this used to be quality assurance. And what Deming was saying, you build a quality into the process so you don't have to, inspect on the way out. Build quality into the system and practice of awarding business on the basis of price tag and find the problems, institute modern methods. So I'll let you go through these 14 points. You should really have a sense of what they're about. Okay. And what he did is he brought the notion of a PDSA, and what it is that this is the actual process, but it's been simplified, and it's called Plan, Do, Check, Act now, right? And really interesting. So you look at the defining the problem and developing the performance measures, and you analyze it, and as you're analyzing, you put it you put it into doing, and then you analyze the problem in terms of checking, and then you actually put it into performance and standardize the solution and enacting. Okay, and inside of that, there's lean manufacturing. And something that you should really know is, what are the 8 wastes, that lean manufacturing are countermeasures to stop those 8 wastes. So there's overproduction, unnecessary inventory, and I talked about earlier is that in some cases, inventory strewn all over the process can make up to 65% of the product's cost, which is crazy, right? And that's unutilized capital just sitting on, inside the building, and so that if you can drop the inventory, you'll increase profits. Waiting, unnecessary transportation, over processing, inefficient work methods, producing defective products, and underutilization of employee knowledge and skills. That's all about employee engagement. Okay, so here's what it looks like. Tim Woods really kind of, made it into a nice illustration so that you could remember all this, so that, there's probably going to be a question somewhere, find and eliminate these 8 forms of waste from your work to respond faster to your customers. Okay. Now, just in time, and lean manufacturing. It's all about distribute the work evenly across workstations, production flexibility, small lot sizes, because if you have small lot sizes, then it forces you to fix problems. If you got large lot sizes, then you've got buffer to be able to keep the problems aside. And then setup time reduction, cellular layout, preventing defects from occurring, and standardizing the process, and little inventory. And here's a little bit of analogy about what you do is, if you have a lot of inventory, you've got a high level of water in this analogy, so you don't see those problems out there. But if you start dropping the inventory, all of a sudden these problems show up, and you fix them. And when you fix them, well, then you have more quality built into your process. And because of that, you can maintain a lower water level, which means a lower inventory level, because your process is running better, that you produce better products and your costs drop. So that's how it all comes together. Okay, we talked about the SIPOC. So again, this is just here to know that, this is an example, for a car dealer, so that you can take a look at what that looks like. And it all comes down to comparing. This really is another canvas. It's no different than putting a business model canvas together and really getting a good overview of what's going on. I talked about this business model canvas way back when. This is one of my heroes here, all right, Dr. Alexander Osterwalder, and again, he produced this value proposition canvas that I told you about. Okay, so what does it do? Here's the things that it helps. It makes the value chain leaner, the process easier. It's delivering quality to their customers. It's a good way to manage the suppliers. So all the things that make up, a good value chain on how you improve that. At the end of the day, you have a happier customer with a better quality product, with more value, in some cases, that really translate into less cost as well. So, and knowing our target market throughout, everybody, all the players in that value chain and value supply piece, or sorry, the supply chain, if all the players know what that customer is like and what they want and what their overall avatar or persona, buying persona attributes are, then they will hone every part of their contribution, and overall, then you get a great offering at the end of the value chain. Okay, I'm not going to talk about this, but now we're into choosing a supplier, and really that is key. In supplier analysis, you look at the flexibility, the location of that supplier, price, the reputation. Are they going to produce the right lead times? How have they worked with other customers? What are they like for service after sale? So those are the kind of things that input into that supplier analysis. You look at their certifications. You would, in some cases, come in with a trial contract to see if they really can produce what they say, and then go to a long-term contract. And again, if you have more suppliers than you need, sometimes you want to build a reliability. You're spreading out your requirements. So what you try to do in best case scenario is have strategic partners, and you can drop your number of suppliers and get your costs down, through less administration. Okay, so here's some of the things that you need to look at, when in the identification and selection. So you're looking at their qualifications. You go through a sort of a short list. You look at, you can request information from them to really get a sense of what they can provide and have, and in an RFI, or request for information, a lot of times the organization that asks for it learns a lot more than what they knew, and it'll improve when they actually put out a request for a proposal, and then you need an evaluation process and develop that short list, and then you do that selection, right? So these are all the pieces that you can go through, but the thing is that common ways to establish that scope of work is, how's the supplier equation with the customers? What's their track record? How are they? Do they fit your corporate culture? How does the supplier fit, in that corporate culture? Is there spare capacity of that supplier? So you may bring in a supplier, and you say in your organization you have a 20-year plan of growth, and you have to get a sense of, can they grow with you, or do they have a limited capacity, and they may be really good for the first 2 years, but then can't really step out of what they're doing to be able to accommodate your growth. So those are the kind of things that you need to look at. And when you look at that, here's some of the key things that you're looking for in terms of warranties, or if they don't meet their service level. So what are the remedies? What kind of pricing are they going to charge you, and those kind of things. Okay, so that's really important. And what I wanted to kind of what you learn in production operations management is that there's a framework for supply chain partners, or people that have strategic alliances, and it's called CPFR. And I just thought it would be good if you knew about it. And it's a collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment. In terms of how they know how to deal with their particular inventory, from the start of the supply chain or value chain to the end. And these groups come together, all these partners, and they do this through a framework and something to know about. Yeah, that's where that is. Okay, so choosing a supplier, I want you to understand what the term keiretsu is. It's a long-term alliance, and it really is, you're highly dependent, and you're in terms of your organization and your partner's dependence. And so it's a high level of interdependence. And that's where you get this effective relationship. So, it's a win-win, the win-win operation. And Toyota Production System is one of the examples of a really good keiretsu. And know the piece about outsourcing or insourcing. So sometimes you might, what they say is, the key to that is, make or buy. So you may decide that you want to do a particular piece of that operation in that supply chain on your own organization, and that's make, right? So you're insourcing, all right? Or you may want to find a partner that's going to do that for you because that's what they specialize in. That's outsourcing. All right. So outsourcing is hiring a party outside the company to perform a part of the value chain process. It could be logistics, it could be IT, those things. Insourcing, using an organization's own personnel or resources to accomplish a task, that was previously outsourced, or, you're starting up in an organization. So here's what it looks like in an illustration. Excuse me. I talked about make or buy analysis. Well, so consider the qualitative and the quantitative factors. So if you're if you're going to buy it, there's some pros, that you avoid some costs, but there's some pros of making it and there's some cons of making it. And then there's the cost of purchase and pros of buying and cons of buying. So those are the kind of things that you need to look at. So if you make it, well, then you got to worry about production, extra labor, monitoring, storage, waste disposal. But if you buy it, you got to worry about purchase price, sales tax, shipping, storage, ordering, those kind of things. So it's all about doing that analysis. And sometimes the best thing to do is outsource, and sometimes the best thing to do is make it yourself, insource. But what you need to understand, though, and I keep on bringing this up all the time, is that you never outsource your core competencies, because what you're doing is you're training someone else to compete with you. So if you take a look at Apple, they do their own design and they do their own marketing, and I think it's Foxconn, does everything else for them. But they hold the design and the marketing to themselves, because that's their core competencies in making them, like giving them the competitive advantage that they have in the market. So that's what you have to remember. Okay, so again, understanding keiretsu networks, profits will go up and costs will go down if you've got the right kind of network. Everybody's got everybody else's back, and they're working, synergistically, to in a value chain to get things out to the market. So here's the definition that you'd better read and understand. So Japanese term referring to a business network made up of different companies, partners, including manufacturers, supply chain partners, distributors, and sometimes even a bank, especially in China. The bank is an integral part of this network, and that's what makes the group so strong in creating value for the customer at a high level of quality. And they form close-knit relationships. They work together for mutual benefit. They often share ownership. Sometimes the suppliers will own part of the manufacturers and vice versa. They exhibit strong alliances, and it's all about cooperation and shared success. So here's one business group structure, just to give you an idea of what that's all about. And then now we get into a supplier evaluation. and again, it's just a standard piece that you learn in operations, business, production operations management. And so you may have some criteria that are more important than others. So you'll give it a higher weighting, all right? So you can see that engineering, is 20% important, in a whole 100% of the makeup. Integrity is 20% important. But again, distribution is only 5% important. So when you take a look at evaluating each one of those criteria with suppliers, well, then what you do is you give them a score and you multiply the weighting of the importance times the score, and then you get a weighted score, and then from that weighted score you can you get an overall number that really gives you an idea of a more of a more real look at how that supplier rates in terms of what they do and what they do that's important, some more than the other. Okay, so that's where that is. And the thing is that understand business integration strategies. So what you need to know is what's vertical integration versus horizontal integration. So let's just take a look at vertical integration. So let's look at Tim Hortons. All right. So right now, Tim Hortons, sells coffee. All right. But the thing is, they could very well buy into a company that creates all the packaging for them, the cups and the trays and all that. So if they're buying that, then they're into integrating or expanding their organization through vertical integration. Down to even buying a coffee bean plantation, right? And you can see that. So going this way is called backward integration. So you're looking at you're buying all the companies up and combining them to strengthen your retail operation. And then forward integration, well, Tim Hortons might have kiosks in colleges. Well, that's a forward integration where they'll have a better channel in terms of more opportunities to sell. Horizontal integration is looking at buying your competitors. So that the Chapters bought Indigo, or Indigo bought Chapters, right? That's horizontal integration. So what you do is you can buy out your competitors and own the whole market, so to speak. So know the difference between vertical and horizontal integration. And then in terms of supply chain management, you understand the overall management starts right at the planning and improving all the way through the the data analysis, and inside that supply chain is the logistics. All right, and so this is a real look at how that supply chain would look like, say, for Amazon, in terms of suppliers and their transport, and in this case it's not manufacturing, but it's order makeup. And then storage and transport and retail and that. Okay, but here's the thing: is that for many years it's always been just logistics of getting that product or service out the door to get to customers. But in today's world, okay, so you buy a barbecue, and the barbecue doesn't quite work, and so what do? Well, you go back to the person that sold it to you, or the organization. You say, "Hey, I want this fixed." So what happens is they take that barbecue back and they send it somewhere to get fixed. That's a backwards logistic, and the companies that get it, in terms of backward integration or backwards logistics, is that when really good at that. It improves customer satisfaction. So take a look at Amazon. You buy a product and it doesn't quite fit or whatever, no hassle. You just send it back, on their shipping dollar. So those are the kind of things that makes overall business a lot more productive and effective and gives it competitive advantage. So understand, forward logistics as much as reverse logistics. Okay, so from the customer, something needs to be fixed or whatever, how does that get done? And that's through reverse logistics. Okay, so reverse logistics, the same word as backward logistics, so understand what that is. Okay, and then what else? Just understand again, that what do you do with end-of-life products in today's world? And so what you want to try to do is look at, circular economics in today's world. And what's happening then is that when a product gets to the end of the life, how can you bring that back into the system and recover parts and whatever? And the more that you can do that means that you're more of a corporate social oriented organization, and will increase your brand awareness about, hey, you're a good corporate citizen and people want to do business with you. So that's really, getting into the closed loop supply chain in terms of bringing it back in circular economics. That's the wave of the future as you're going through. Okay. And so that, and you can see in this closed loop, well, what they're doing now is they're looking at, return evaluation and recovery facility and disposal and those kind of things. Okay. So again, like I said earlier, competition is no longer between companies, it's between supply chains. And when you start understanding that, then you can really understand the value of integrated supply chains where all the partners are, real-time aware of what's going on through, blockchain and AI processes to be able to be responsive and flexible to the customers, even though there's hundreds of partners in these large supply chains. Okay, so important activities. You need to look at transportation vendors, credit and cash transfers, the suppliers, distributors. How you're going to do the accounting on that, the warehousing, order fulfillment. There's all these things to know about, which brings that into the technology and supply chain management. So you have enterprise requirement planning, ERP, and this ERP now, especially now being driven by AI, so it's a software and it integrates everything, finance, human resources, logistics, manufacturing, supply chain management, customer relationship management. So all the players have a view of what's going on, and all the analysis is being done to be able to get the right understanding of what customers are looking for and how they're adapting to, the trends and their preferences are changing and how the competition is running. All this comes together, on an ERP, right? And just a little bit to know about ERP systems. They integrate all the functions. Integration is the key word. And it integrates customers and suppliers, provides integrated database, custom design reports, adopts best practices for carrying out all the processes. And you can see the reason for for adopting ERP is, you can do this enterprise resource planning right across, in terms of, from purchasing, to, manage that inventory to distributing. So that's a key part of the business. All right, this is more for your information, but I just wanted to, that there's major challenges to an ERP. So, I was at TELUS when they brought in SAP, and it's somewhat of an ERP implementation, and it takes years, to bring this in. And what happens is it's a major transformation. And when during a major transformation, there's resistance to change. And this is key. If I learned anything in change management, is that any project, it starts off, at a certain point, and people are excited about it when it starts off, but then all of a sudden when it's on the downside because people think that they're losing things. So all of a sudden someone says, oh wait, hang on, I used to have 20 employees, but now I only have 10, and I'm not doing what I did before, so my influence is lower. Oh gee, am I going to get laid off, right? And what happens is, if you're not celebrating the wins, and in every one of these projects you get down to which Anderson, which is now Accenture, they said, hey, you get into this valley of despair, and if you know this is coming, you can prepare for it, and you can celebrate, whatever wins you have, and get people ready for it, so that you can get down from that slump and then start, getting the advantages of that major transformation. And in an ERP implementation, you're going to be on that curve. There's no doubt about it. Just so know about it. All right. Look at this. So 53 companies out of 63 reported annual savings of over 5 million, and the median annual savings of 1.6 million. So there's benefits to be had, but it's costly. All right. Uh, and there, it takes 12 to 18 months, sometimes, 4 to 5 years. And it takes a lot of maintenance, and an average of, so look at this, 35 million to migrate, this platform to operate a system over a 7-year period, in this particular application. So you got to know what's going on here. But here's what you should know, is that there's a lot of good jobs, in the ERP field. And I did a little bit of, this is a ways back, but look at the salaries here for different types of consultants and subject matter experts, in like SAP, which is an ERP system. So again, lots to know about this piece. And I think that's near the end. So any questions at all? I know I kind of screamed through this. There were a lot of slides, but again, I'd like you to pay attention to what's highlighted, what's underlined, where are the golden keys, and that'll really give you an idea of what's really important to kind of review and see what you need to do. So any questions, you can unmute or just, send a chat. Okay, so I will stop the recording. And